Nick Newman sat in his office at Newman Enterprises, his hand clutching a glass of scotch as his mind raced. His thoughts were clouded with a storm of frustration, anger, and a sense of betrayal. Just hours ago, he had learned that Matt Clark, his longtime enemy, had been released from prison. The news hit him like a punch to the gut. After everything Matt had done to him and his family, it felt like the world had just handed him another injustice. Nick had been ready to destroy Matt, to end the man's life for good, but somehow the justice system had failed him yet again. He slammed the glass down on the desk, his anger bubbling over. The old Nick, the one who had been pushed to the edge countless times before, began to surface. There was a time when Nick would have just gone after Matt without thinking about the consequences, but now he found himself trapped in a web of his own making. Matt Clark was free, and the thought of that sent Nick into a fit of rage. Nick had spent years trying to get his life together. He'd been through it all: betrayal, heartache, the near destruction of his family. And now Matt, the man who had caused so much pain, was walking free once again, as if none of the destruction mattered. The fury in Nick's chest was almost unbearable. He had tried to control himself, but now he knew there was only one thing left to do. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. Matt Clark was a threat, and Nick knew the justice system wasn't going to solve this problem. In his mind, Matt had to be put down once and for all. Nick's thoughts were dark, his desperation pushing him further down the path of no return. Flashbacks flooded his mind. He could remember the night Matt had almost been the end of him, the night his family had prevented him from doing something irreversible. Victor, Sharon, Noah, and even Sienna had all stepped in, talked him down, and kept him from going too far. It wasn't that Nick hadn't been willing to do it, it was that he had been stopped by those who loved him. Victor's voice echoed in Nick's mind, reminding him of what had happened that night. "You could have gone to prison, Nick," Victor had warned. The words stung, but they were also a reminder that Victor had saved him from what could have been a catastrophic decision. Yet, despite Victor's reminder, Nick couldn't help but feel betrayed by the system. It had let Matt go, and now the monster was out there again. Matt had caused chaos in their lives for years, always slipping through their fingers, always getting away with his crimes. He had been manipulative, ruthless, and cunning. Each time he had been locked away, Nick had hoped that the nightmare was over, only for it to begin again when Matt got out. Nick was done. He couldn't let it continue. If Matt wasn't going to pay for his sins, Nick was willing to take matters into his own hands. But Nick wasn't blind. He knew what would happen if he killed Matt. The consequences would be severe. He would be arrested. He would face a trial. He could even go back to prison. But at this point, Nick didn't care. He was past the point of no return. There would be no peace for him as long as Matt was alive. Sharon had been the one to talk him down before, and she would probably try again. But Nick was beyond reasoning. He knew that if he didn't act now, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Matt Clark had been a thorn in his side for too long, and it was time to remove that thorn for good. As the night dragged on, Nick formulated his plan. It wasn't just about killing Matt anymore. It was about making sure that Matt would never come back. He couldn't risk Matt pulling off another one of his tricks, pretending to be dead, framing Nick for a murder he hadn't committed. That had happened before, and Nick couldn't afford to let it happen again. The thought of Matt pulling some elaborate scheme to frame him for his death made Nick's blood boil. The last time Matt had faked his death, he had manipulated Nick into taking the fall for it. Nick had spent time behind bars, his name dragged through the mud before he was finally exonerated. Nick couldn't let that happen again. He couldn't risk being caught in one of Matt's sick games. With his mind made up, Nick's sense of purpose sharpened. There would be no more hesitation. He would do whatever it took to make sure Matt didn't rise from the ashes again. This time, Nick wouldn't let anyone stop him. If it meant going to prison, if it meant losing everything, then so be it. Matt Clark had to be stopped, and Nick Newman was the only one who could do it. The next day, Nick met with his closest allies. Victor, as always, was a mix of support and caution. "You're playing with fire, Nick," Victor warned, his voice calm but heavy with experience. "Matt's no ordinary man. He's smart, he's dangerous, and he's always got a trick up his sleeve. If you go after him, you better be prepared for the consequences." Nick's gaze hardened. He didn't need Victor's lectures. He didn't need anyone's advice anymore. This was his battle, his choice. "I'm ready, Dad. I've been ready for years. It ends now." Victor studied his son's face, seeing the resolve that had replaced the familiar anger. "I don't want to see you end up like him," Victor said quietly, his tone softer now. "But if this is what you need to do, I won't stop you. Just don't let your emotions make you reckless." Nick's mind was already made up. He didn't care about the risks. He didn't care about the consequences. Matt had crossed the line one too many times. Now it was time for Matt to pay. The plan was simple: find Matt, eliminate the threat, and ensure he never came back. Nick couldn't afford to let Matt use any more loopholes, to manipulate any more people. This time it had to be final. But as the day progressed, something changed. Nick's determination began to waver. It wasn't the fear of getting caught or the consequences of his actions that troubled him. It was the realization that even if he killed Matt, the hole in his life would still be there. The rage, the frustration, the years of torment, they wouldn't vanish with Matt's death. Nick had spent so much time fighting Matt, but now he realized that it wasn't just about Matt anymore. It was about his own peace, his own healing. Nick began to question everything. Could he really find peace by taking Matt's life? Would it truly end the pain, or would it just create more? The thought haunted him. He wanted to believe that killing Matt would rid him of the lingering threat, but deep down, he knew that it wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't fix the scars that had been left on his family, on his life. As the day wore on, Nick found himself at a crossroads. His original plan to take matters into his own hands suddenly felt wrong. Killing Matt wouldn't give him the closure he so desperately needed. It would only drag him further into the darkness. And so, with the weight of everything pressing down on him, Nick made a decision. He would confront Matt one last time, but this time he would use his head instead of his fists. He would put an end to Matt's reign of terror without becoming the monster Matt had always wanted him to be. Nick knew it wouldn't be easy. Matt wasn't the type to go down without a fight, but this time Nick was ready. He wouldn't let Matt control him any longer. It was time to take back his life, to put the past behind him once and for all. But as Nick prepared for the final showdown, he couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. Matt was always 5 steps ahead, always scheming. Nick couldn't let his guard down, not for a second. And as the clock ticked down, he realized that the battle for his peace was just beginning.